4 decades ago, we were one of the strongest factions in the wasteland, standing as the only remnant of the United States of America, and on the way to reform it. But in a joint strike, our enemies from the NCR and the Brotherhood destroyed Navarro, our capital, and finished off all our last bastions. Demoralized, leaderless and homeless, our remnants scattered in the wind, never to be seen again. At least that's what the NCR believes. Right under the noses of the Californian giant, Sargent Durnan has been working to unite the Enclave remnants to bring back our dream. Work has already started to recruit a new generation of Americans and to use old radio broadcasting to call all our old Enclave members. However, we must constantly hide our activities from the NCR, otherwise they would crush us. But we aren't completely defenseless. Several old fighters are joining us and our power armor is still one of the best. And we do have some allies that are willing to help us. Not militarily, but an old crime family from New Reno is helping us with research. While things are looking up and Sargent Durnan has done a great job so far, we are in the need of a president due to the political infighting. There has been a polarization between two factions, the purists and the reformists. The purists are insisting that in order for America to be restored, it must rid itself of ghouls and mutants. The reformers, however, believe that embracing the new species is the only way to succeed in our mission. To fix this damaging conflict, an election was called, and it was extremely close. The reformist candidate Douglas Granite only managed to win after the Sarge put his support behind him and tipped the scales. So we now have a new president, Douglas Granite. Despite several controversies about his past, he's a charismatic leader which will greatly help us. Now that the reformists are in power, the long road of reforming the Enclave and America has begun. But despite losing the elections, the purists are fighting even harder against us. Several scientists and military commanders have openly criticized the new government. Under these conditions, reform is impossible, so the first of our goals will be to rid the purists of any political power. After reaching out to centrists and sending unloyal officers to training, as well as hiring Boris T, the reformer, we managed to consolidate power. And after holding a charismatic speech, Granite got many fellow Americans on his side. This allowed us to demote the loyal scientists and generals, to then purge their leaders. Then, after making wild promises to the people, the purist faction dropped under 15% popularity, so we could try to assassinate their leader without big consequences. Sadly it failed, but he and his most loyal followers were forced to flee the country. Still, the opposition is finally purged and the work to reform can start. Additionally, our army has grown strong enough, with old enclavists joining our rank, that we can start to slowly but surely take back land. And while some are advocating to work with the NCR and only claim Nevada, we will make it clear that we don't support them. Our vision is and will always be to revive the United States of America. And we will immediately start our first conquest, going to the city of crime, New Reno. With an almost 3,000-man army, we declared war and held the north with our infantry, while our power armor divisions advanced towards New Reno. Despite having many divisions, our enemy weren't ready for our attack at all, and we arrived to the outskirts of the city before the majority of their army had even arrived. Despite many of them arriving after a while, they stood no chance against our power armor, and we successfully crossed the river into central New Reno, capturing their capital and continuing southwards. Soon their two last major cities were captured, the Stables and Carson City, forcing the crime families to surrender. This is the first time we occupy unloyal lands in a long time, so a lot has to be done. Strict regulation on policing were put in place, and we decided that the best course of action to integrate the state would be to rebuild it. At the same time, we started dealing with the crime families. We seized all of Mr. Bishop's assets, but unfortunately he fled to the NCR and told them about us. While they don't believe him, it will be much more costly to hold us hidden. Instead of doing the same with the Wrights, the strongest crime family in New Reno, we allow them to join our institutions due to our shared dreams of a peaceful city. This was enough to make the New Reno population comfortable with our patrols and power, so we changed our capital to the city. It is a trade hub, so it will greatly help us, but with it comes much more responsibility. We've already banned all slave trade and are starting to work on restoring the economy of the city by expanding the military-industrial complex. And with all our new territories, several mutants are now in our country and the issue of integration has to be answered. Despite the anti-integrationists having grown quite strong, Granite has already answered the question. Integration it is. The definition of human has already been expanded to include wastelanders. Gauls and super mutants will have to come in the future. Nonetheless, the integration process can begin, allowing them to become politicians, integrating them into the army and letting their brightest minds help our research. While all extremely costly at first, it allowed us to break down the barrier between the new citizens and the old guard of the Enclave, improving not only our country but our legitimacy as the one true American government. Now, despite having a lot of work left, especially in making New Reno a better capital city, our army is ready to expand again. And this time we have a lot of new territories to expand to.
Yes, we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will rally from the hills and we'll gather from the plain, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah, down with the traitor, up with the star. While we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We are springing to the call of our brothers gone before, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
Despite still having the opportunity to attack the Vipers and the Jackals, we've decided not to. Both because we want to focus on the land we already have and since we need to prepare for the NCR. Since after all these wars, holding us hidden has become extremely costly. But before we do all this, we will look at what we already have done. On the integration front, things have gone great. In the Yakuza territories, we've decided to preserve their Japanese culture, which led to low resistance, high compliance, and even old Yakuza fighters joining our army. Vault City was cored and has become the second city of the reunited states after New Reno. Then in the tribal state of Modoc, we forced them to accept civilization, and finally in all other states, our spies and rioters have done a great job rooting out resistance and raising compliance. But that wasn't all we did during the conflicts. New Reno became a fully fledged capital city. A White House has been built as well as a Congress building and a Supreme Court. This has shot our legitimacy sky high, helping us to integrate our new territories. The last thing we did was recreate the CIA and field more spies to help us infiltrate the NCR. So the time has come to start to prepare both our army and our spies for the coming battle. But since time is running out way too quick, we first devised the plan to lower NCR suspicion. It was to provide raiders with weapons to attack the NCR and distract their army. With now more time on our hand, we have started training more infantrymen. And to prepare our economy, we have gone from civilian to war economy, as well as started construction on military factories around the country. But our army alone won't win the war. Our spies too play an important part, and they will initiate Operation Babylon. Since the NCR are democratic, infiltrating them is far easier. And there is already a party we have decided to support, the Old World Party. They are surprisingly sympathetic to us, and by strengthening them, our ultimate plan is to create a civil war in the Republic. Our spies have also organized patriots in the states closest to us to raise up once the war is started. In addition, we've started spreading propaganda with the help of the Old World Radio, both to recruit more men to our army and to spread highly demoralizing propaganda to the NCR population and their soldiers. Turning back to our army, work has started to make the Sierra Army Depot our new base of operations. After exploring the site, we found several pieces of useful military equipment. VB-2 helicopters that will strike and supply from the sky, 200 trash cans on legs which might come in handy, and a bunch of old technology. Finally, to truly make the base the headquarters of our army, we used technology from Vault City to restore the reactor of the base, turning on the air defense and radar systems simultaneously. So finally, the base truly is a perfect military base, and we have even surpassed the NCR in military factories. That, together with the fact that we have run out of political power to hide from the NCR after spending it all to massively improve recruitment in our new territories, means the war will soon start. So some last preparations were made. Our army will soon reach over 10,000 men, and our spies have continued to increase collaboration in the NCR. In addition, we have cracked the rudimentary encryption, which will largely help us to both defend and attack. So our army now consists of 58 divisions and 14,000 men. While less than the NCR, they are at war with the Shi and the Veil bandits, struggling against both. So we told the Old World Party to write a petition for major reform of the constitution, which reached the Senate. But they completely refused to listen. So the Old World Party started to protest, and as they were fired upon by NCR loyalists, the Californian Civil War started, and with it we launched our invasion. While there weren't many rising up on our side, it was still enough to portray the invasion as a popular uprising, and the loyalists in the north have already taken complete control over every state from Redding to Tumbledown Ranch. We will now stage 2 offensives, one to our old capital, Navarro, and the second to advance as far as we can south with the first goal of reaching Shady Sands. Being guided by the loyalists, our main army arrived to the southern border before any significant NCR reinforcements had arrived, allowing us to start advancing without much resistance. The first city we captured was Gator Ranch, but our main focus was on the trading hub of Sac City. Here, the NCR defenses were the strongest on the whole front. However, with their weak flanks, our power armor regiments managed to encircle the city and then destroy all enemy forces trying to defend it. During this offensive, our attack to Navarro had just started, and Caesar's Legion captured the important Hoover Dam from the NCR. However, one bad thing happened as well. The Shi signed a peace deal with the Californians, granting them 2 states. The Old World Party has denounced this peace deal and have demanded that we help them to end this Chinese beachhead. We decided to fulfill this request, but only after we have reached the border from the north. So to reach it, we stepped up our offensive into the Navarro territories. While there was a single division defending it at first, since the NCR are now at peace with the Shi, the divisions fighting them could be turned north, and for the first time we started noticing their resistance. Still, we captured all of northern Tehama state, but since we don't have any power armor units here, we decided to stop and return our focus to the south, so that we then can shift the power armor units back to the north. Here in the south, we've already arrived close to the Nevada range, splitting our roads, with one going to Shady Sands and the other going towards the rest of their cities. While we've already decided to focus on advancing to their capital, we must first set up a strong position on the second direction. And we did it in Tulare, where our units will be perfectly protected by the river that goes through the small settlement of Quartz Hill. Turning to Yosemite, both sides have assembled a large force. However, the Californians are both demoralized and not at full strength, meaning our power armor divisions could easily break their defenses and capture the first town before turning south towards Shady Sands. Using the tight corridor to our advantage, all NCR forces were completely encircled and destroyed, opening the road to their capital. Soon our first divisions had arrived, with no units meeting them. The government and army commanders had already fled to the boneyard. With no big reinforcements arriving to take back the city, we could capture 2 settlements in western Mojave and one in the northern reaches, making our front smaller and allowing us to safely guard it with only infantry, while our armored troops marched to Navarro. After some weeks, they had arrived to the north, and for the first time the Californians seemed to know our plan, because they had mostly left the front in fear of our attack. So Navarro, our old capital, was easily captured. But we can't stop here since we've promised to destroy the Xi as well. So we declared war and started to attack their defenses in the north. But this war might have been a great mistake, since using their navy they could naval invade Sac City. Now instead of trying to defend the city, we decided to go all in on our invasion with the hopes of crushing the Xi before they could reach Gator Ranch and cut off the road to California. While a risky move, our power armor divisions made it into a logical one. As they stormed through the settlements on the northern side of the California Bay, there was nothing stopping them from crossing to the San Francisco state. Concord was the first city to fall, then despite some resistance, San Francisco fell as well, and finally with the fall of Antioch, the Xi capitulated and our gamble paid off. Not only is the invasion of Sac City over, but we've annexed all their territories, opening a second front against the Californians, which we will use immediately. As our forces arrived, they had already assembled a defensive wall, but it was too thin. As we started attacking, we simultaneously tried to cross the river in Quartz Hill. While this offensive failed, at least it forced the Californians to split the reinforcements towards two fronts. This made it so that once we broke through their defenses, they couldn't fill in the gaps, allowing us to encircle most of their troops. With them out of the question, we moved towards the first major Californian cities, Necropolis and then Maxon. With the Californian populace now having turned against the government and the Californian army in complete disarray, they surrendered and we have become the rulers of California. While you might think all we have done so far has been hard work, it is now that the hard work begins. All of California must be rebuilt, their resistance must be put out, and our constitutions and government must be largely reformed to rule over this huge land that lies in anarchy. And all this while we now have Caesar's Legion on our border, meaning we must massively reform our military. If you think that isn't needed since Caesar's Legion is a backward state, don't be so sure about that. Together with their allies, their army is the biggest in the wasteland, as well as their air force, which is maybe 5 times bigger than everyone else combined. Luckily, a 2-year truce has been signed for now. Fortunately, some of our much needed reforms have already been done during the war. Using the power from Vault City reactor, we've started building a civilian power grid throughout our Nevada states, which will allow us to core them. We also accepted both ghouls and super mutants, recruiting them into our army and allowing them to fully integrate into our society. Since we can't start rebuilding California immediately due to their resistance, we will begin with rebuilding Navarro instead. Despite it being quite a small base, we put in a lot of effort to expand it, constructing 3 military workshops and opening room for 2 more. We then turned to its subsurface that had been completely destroyed. During the cleanup, however, we found several schematics, including one for an improved power armor suit. While there is still a lot to do with the base, resistance across the NCR has started to lower and Granite has announced that it's time to rebuild the nation. He has decided to first and foremost deal with the anarchy on the streets. This by creating a stable rule of law and reviving the judiciary. We even restored an old Supreme Court justice, having survived the Great War after being turned into a Gaul. Finally, we founded the Federal Bureau of Investigations, who will be tasked with hunting down the worst criminals. However, they won't be able to stop the Brahmin barons. They were one of the most corrupt businessmen during the NCR era and are now trying to establish control over parts of California as well. To deal with them, turning our state truly democratic is the only solution. Because for all this time, the president has mostly been the complete ruler over the country. However, Granite has decided to change this. A free press has already been founded, and after the reformist faction changed their name to the Reconstruction League and a new party, the New World Party, standing for the people, emerged, Granite decided to cooperate with them and appointed their leader as vice president. So the faith of our democracy has already been sealed. The Congress was empowered and passed their first act, the Voting Rights Act, massively raising our legitimacy and helping our government to grow stronger. It became itself after we held the first free elections in America in 200 years. Fortunately, Granite won the election and the Reconstruction League and the New World Party are ruling in the Congress. There is now one last thing we can do before we can turn to the difficult task of rebuilding our economy and reforming the wages of our army who have gotten useless. To remove the Californian resistance. This means we must make the Californian people our friends. While many are against us, the likes of the Old World Party will make it easier for the Californians to accept us. And once we integrated some of their old politicians, those who hadn't fled of course, the Californians have stopped openly resisting our government. So we can at last turn towards our economy, but this is for the next video. Not only will we prepare and probably clash with Caesar, but secrets around the wasteland will be discovered. From Area 51 in Nevada to sentient non-human creatures who might also want human rights. So make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to join the adventures of restoring the glorious United States of America.